real quick thing about that. Can I share about her TikTok?
Yeah.
All right. So this girl Natalia is on TikTok. Any of you guys who are under my age probably know that. I'm like, I don't know TikTok. But anyway, she's on TikTok, and she ended up making a video of just her coming in. And she's like, I'm on my way, I'm by myself, I'm really nervous. And then she has her baptism, and it's already, as of last night, it was over 30,000 views. So, yeah, come on. So the word is getting out. The baptisms have been so special. I know some of you got baptized on the first night. Darren was planning on getting baptized, and I knew that, and so we kind of ran into each other outside before the service started. I'm like, are you excited? He's like, I'm a little nervous. He's like, actually, no, I'm not nervous. He said, the best way I know how to describe it, and I asked his permission to share this. He said, the best way I know how to describe it is if you were to close your fist and squeeze it as tight as you can for 43 years and then let go. Whew, right? Come on. Like, that's the kind of thing that God is doing, and we're just so blessed to be part of it. Can I share a little confession to you? I don't really know what I'm preaching on today. So we're just going to figure it out. We are, as Caleb mentioned, we've been doing a series called Victorious. And we had a whole plan for the whole series and didn't really pick up on the fact that the fifth part of the series fell onto Mother's Day, and we thought, like I told you last week, we don't really want to talk about the spirit of offense on Mother's Day. That might be offensive. So we skipped that, and so then it fell to today, and I was like, okay, God, is this what you want me to share? And there's been some other things that have been coming up. But it's interesting because I was feeling like, no, we should really go on, with what's going on in the tent and all of that, and I will share some of that as well, but I really felt like God was saying, no, this is actually the perfect thing to share on. Because when God starts to move in weird ways, like, hey, pitch a tent on your lawn and have bugs flying around your service, it can start to be a little weird and a little offensive sometimes. When God starts to tell us weird things, and I find myself helping bunnies to have babies, and I'm like, why is this my life? What is happening? And then you go like, but I just feel like we're just being obedient to God, and we don't fully understand the whole picture. But like, read scripture. He's weird, like in the best way, right? I don't mean to be offensive, God, please don't. He won't take offense to that, right? But he loves to do things that are out of the box. He loves to do things that get us just a little bit uncomfortable. Why? Because he's the comforter. He loves to get us to a place where we're right on the edge. Galen spoke a couple Sundays ago, and he was talking about being right on that edge, right? And it's like that jumping off, that taking that risk. But all of that can feel a little offensive. I know it can for me. There are times where it's like you start to get out there and you start to invite other people in, and you start to say, okay, God, how are we going to partner, and what's going on, and what do you want to do? And suddenly you find yourself in the midst of some crazy, messy things. And if we're not careful, we can end up becoming offended. I want to read to you guys this whole series. We've kind of been focusing on this really famous story that Jesus tells of, it's called the parable of the prodigal son. And I'll just give you a really brief recap just in case anybody doesn't know it. But Jesus tells this story, and really it's actually the third in a series of stories where he's basically trying to show everybody. He's actually really showing the Pharisees, the religious people, who are coming in and questioning him, and why are you doing this, and why are the sinners around, and these religious people who have it all together, and they spend their lives going, we're doing all the right things, God, look at us, we're doing all the right things. And they're coming to Jesus, and they're so offended because this man who they obviously do not believe he's the Messiah, they do not believe he's the Son of God, but they probably at least realized that he was a rabbi. They knew he was. Like, he was qualified as a rabbi. He's teaching. He's got disciples. He's teaching in the synagogues. He teaches with power. That's one of the first things that they said about him, is who is this man that speaks with such authority? So they realize he's somebody, and he's gaining this following, but they're offended because he's not gathering all the well put together good Jewish boys and girls. He's actually mostly attracting the really sinful, messy, messed up troublemakers, the prostitutes, the tax collectors, those who are just the outcasts, even literally the lepers who are not even allowed to physically come in the community because they're so contagious, and they literally have to, like, I'm not going to get into it, it's too graphic, but it's awful, and they're literally having to be out in the out, and they're the ones coming up to Jesus. And these Pharisees are going, like, what are you doing? And Jesus tells these 3 stories, and each of the stories he ends up telling are all about how valuable every person is. How valuable every person, no matter how clean and shiny they are, no matter how struggling and sinners they are so valuable. And he tells these 3 stories, and the first is the lost sheep, and then the lost coin, and the third is this lost son. And he tells the story of the lost son who comes, and there's 2 brothers, and they come to the younger brother comes to his father and says, I'm not really interested in being part of your family anymore. Give me my inheritance now. In other words, I kind of wish you were dead, because your money means more to me than you do. And so the father does. He divides the entire, everything he has, and he gives half of it to this younger son. And this younger son goes out and literally squanders everything. And then a famine comes on the land, and he has lost everything with prostitutes and wild living, the Bible says, doing all the not good Jesus things. And he loses everything, and he gets to the point where he has nothing, and he's having to go eat with the pigs. And even there, like Cody spoke a couple weeks ago about how he joins himself. So he becomes a slave, essentially. And but they won't even feed him what the pigs are eating. That's how bad it is. And he finally comes to his senses. And it says that he comes to his senses, and he says, well, even the lowest servant in my father's house is doing better than I am. I should just go back and say, hey, I'll be your servant. And as he goes, his father sees him from a distance and runs out. And he puts the robe over him. He puts the ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And if you guys didn't hear the series, I'd encourage you to go back, because each of those things represent so much. Jesus doesn't waste words. Every single one of those things means so much. And so the father goes and he says, okay, go and kill the fattened calf and let's have this party. And this is the part where I want to pick up. This is Luke chapter 15, verse 25. It says, meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. And he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I have slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet, when the son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed with me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found. Right? Come on. But this brother, what is he stuck in? Offense. He's stuck in offense. And this whole series is about how everything that God offers us is that we can step into the victory that Jesus already won. We get to step into everything that he already won for us. Freedom, healing, salvation, deliverance, joy, strength, confidence, boldness. All of these things that Jesus already won on the cross. I think it was Marlon the other night said, like, your sins are on the cross. but you are off the cross with Jesus. And I think that's something important that we need to remember. This is a little side note, but I think that's something important that we need to remember. Like, Jesus already went to the cross. He took on our sin, but then he got off. And a lot of us want to stay up there. A lot of us want to keep on crucifying ourselves and living in guilt and shame and all of that junk. Anyway, side note. What was I talking about? Offense. Brother. So this brother literally sees that his younger brother has come back. But he's so stuck. You see, and we're going for victory. That's where I was. I lost it. I found it. Good. We're going for victory. We're stepping into everything that Jesus has for us. But, like we've said again and again and again, the devil is not original. All he can do is attack what God's doing. He has no authority at all. No authority. So all he can do is see what God's doing and try to come against it and try to convince us that he is stronger than God. And the moment he can convince us in our own minds that he is stronger, or his attacks are more powerful, or what he's doing on the earth is more than what God can. And I'm going to tell you, like, a lot of the church, worldwide church, believes that. Because otherwise we'd be seeing a whole lot more transformation. If the church actually believed that what God can do on this earth is more powerful than what the devil is doing on this earth, we would see a whole lot. We'd be seeing thousands added to our numbers every day. Right? But we've stopped believing that. We've started to believe the lie that Satan comes and he attacks, and what he's doing in the world has such a grip on the world that there are some who cannot be saved. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. We believe that what he's doing in our schools, what he's doing in governments across the world, what he's doing has more power. And that is just not true. And so this Victorious series is all about, what does God say about us? And then you always look at the opposite and go, okay, that's what the enemy's going to attack. And he's going to attack in the opposite way. And so God has given us unity and acceptance and love. And one of the biggest ways that the devil comes against it is by getting us to be offended with each other. And the word says that we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. So every time you hear me say offense and that person pops up in your head, your fight is not against them. It's against the powers and the principalities who convince them to believe the lie that caused them to step in and do something that hurt you. And now you are fighting them instead of fighting him. We're pushing back the gates of hell. But instead, we're fighting out here against each other. And the gates of hell are coming closer to us instead. But if we were to actually get our eyes fixed on what is actually important, that is Jesus won the victory, and because of that, we, the church, are the rock on which he builds everything to go and actually push back the gates of hell, right? But I find the story of this older brother fascinating, because we as Christians can look at it and go, oh, that silly old brother. But how many of us do that? How many of us go, yeah, but I want to be comfortable. I don't want God to ask me to go do these things. How many of us, how many times have I gone, God, but that's weird, I don't want to look weird. But God is asking us to step out and to believe that he actually accomplished everything that is needed to see this entire world transformed, to see every knee bow and every tongue confess, right? I was thinking about it, and I think 3 things that God gave me of why people can get stuck in offense. The first one, I believe, is unmet needs. Unmet needs. I was thinking about my beautiful daughter, Kayla. She's 6. And she's so amazing and so special, and we tell her all the time. But she she's got this thing where sometimes when she sees anybody else, like even I was just telling Marshall this morning, like the other day I was washing our 3-year-old's hair, and she usually like freaks out and screams and won't let me, which is why her hair is always like a tangled mess, because she doesn't like me to wash her hair, because she doesn't like when the soap comes near her or the water on her head or whatever. And she was letting me actually do it, and I was like, Taylor, good job, you're doing so good, you're letting me wash your hair, see, it's not scary. And Kayla right away goes, Mommy, why don't you say that for me? I do a good job washing my hair. And she constantly can like, yeah, but what about me? And what Cody and I have started to realize is like whenever she's doing that, it probably means that she's definitely a words of affirmation girl. And she just needs, like there's something that is unmet in her that we just need to go, you are so special. And it's okay for other people to be special too. Right? We don't want to get her to the point where it's like, oh, everything that anybody else gets, she needs to get too. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that sometimes people end up reacting, getting hurt, getting bitter, holding on to unforgiveness because they have an unmet need. And when they see God meet that need in somebody else's life, they go, yeah, but what about me? But what's fascinating about what the father says to his oldest son, you look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. Right? So many of us are sitting here as believers and going, yeah, but what about me? What about me, God? And he's going, you have always been with me, and everything I have is yours. We just need to actually stand up and get it. Right? Jay Koopman on Friday was talking about this exact thing. He's like, the story, it came up last night too again, the story of the man who's sitting at the pool and he's been crippled his entire life. And when Jesus comes to him, you know, this pool is stirred up. It says that angels come down and stir the pool up, and the first person to get in this pool of Bethesda would be healed. But this man is crippled, so he can't get in. And when Jesus comes and says to him, do you want to be well? His answer is, yeah, but nobody will help me. Right? Nobody will help me. And Jesus says, in my name, I guess, he says, get up and walk. Right? He says, get up and walk. And Jay's point was, some of us are sitting back on the mat waiting for somebody else to pick us up, waiting for God to show up, waiting for an angel to come and meet us and go, now's the time, waiting for somebody to come tell you how worthy and worth it you are, and how special you are, and how God sees you. And I'm here to tell you all of that right now, because you need to realize that everything you have and everything that he has for you is available for you. And you need to get up and take it. Like he's not waiting, right? God already did it all. Jesus already did it all. And he's going, tag, you're it. Tag, you're it. We got to stop acting, me too, we got to stop acting like these kids sitting back waiting for somebody to take care of us. We need to step out and take it. Take everything that he has for us. I think another thing that people can end up holding on to offense is when they have unhealed hurts. When you have pain from your past, it's so easy to get offended. I know there's been times, I didn't check with my dad, but I'm sure he'd be fine with me sharing this. But I remember there was a time where this, right? Yeah? Good? All right. There was a time where this lady came to the church, and she was just like kind of rude and mean to him all the time. And eventually, as they started like talking, she eventually just said, you know, you remind me of my dad, and he just was not a good dad to me. But there was something just about the way my dad looked that reminded her of her dad. And because of that, she held offense in her heart towards my dad, who had never done anything wrong to her at all. And that's the problem, is when we walk around unhealed, when we walk around slapping the Jesus Band-Aid on and going, I'm a happy Christian now, let's go. But we don't actually allow God to heal our heart. We don't actually allow him to take us back into that moment and go, I am here, and I'm putting you back together. Right? The word says that he binds up the brokenhearted. Right? And when we don't let him do that, and we leave our hearts broken and bleeding in our past, and we just keep trying to run away from it, we are going to end up bringing that pain into our present whether we like it or not. We're going to end up attacking, or Tammy and I were talking a couple weeks ago, and we were just talking about how, yeah, it's so important that we actually deal, like in our family, that we even deal with things. We make sure that there's no bitterness, there's no offense, there's nothing like that, because otherwise it's like a hit and run. You kind of go and you're driving and you hit and you're like, oh, well, shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Keep going. And that causes so much damage. Instead of recognizing, no, we actually need to take control. And we need to step in with Jesus and go, I need to be healed. I need to forgive. I need to let go. I need to forgive the person who never cared for me when they should have. For some of you, it was your parent, a mother or father, or both, who should have been the one who raised you up and taught you and told you how beautiful you are and how incredible you are and how the creator of the universe chose to create you, chose to make everything about you, and decided that you were not only worthy to be placed in this earth, but you were worthy to be died for. You are worthy for him to pursue you with everything. For him to go to the ends of the earth for you. Your parents were supposed to tell you that. But some of you, your parents, either by just neglect and not even saying it at all, or some of you, they did the opposite. And they beat you down. And they made you believe you were a mistake. And I want to tell you today that there is healing. And that until you get that healing, you're going to carry that root, that hurt, that offense. And you're never going to be able to fully walk in who God has you to be. You're never going to be able to fully reach all of the people that he wants you to reach. This is his plan. You're his plan. And when we're so stuck in our pain, we come out of offense and we're going to end up hurting people. But if we will actually choose to deal and forgive and let go of that bitterness, then we get to walk forward in freedom, and those people don't have a hold on us anymore. The lies don't have a hold on us anymore. So unmet needs, unhealed hurts, and the last one that I feel like God was saying is unrealistic expectations. I think sometimes we come in to relationships with people, whether it be a spouse, a parent, even a child, a friendship, a pastor, and we come in expecting people to do something for us. Whether it's heal our brokenness, whether it's just make us feel good about ourselves all the time. We wake up every morning with an empty cup and we're like, come on, fill it up. Fill it up. And when they're having a bad day, that offense comes. Or when they're not able to meet us in the way that we expect, then we're offended by them. My mentor, Eric, who's coming on Tuesday, you guys need to come on Tuesday, come on. I'm super excited. He always says, there is no healthy expectation, there's only healthy agreement. And I love that. When we put expectations on people, we're gonna get let down, people. Because people are people. You guys figured that out yet? People are people, they're humans. No matter what, even if they're like walking so closely with Jesus, like that's amazing. You can grow and you can mature, and it's amazing. But they can still let you down. We still mess up sometimes, right? And if we have those expectations of people, we're always going to be let down. But if we have healthy agreements with people, hey, this is what I need from you. Can you give it? Not I expect you to give it, but can you give it? Then they get to say, yeah, I think I can give that. Even something as simple as Eric always tells me the story of him and his co-pastor. And she always expects him, if she texts him, she expects him to reply right away. And he's like, I hate text. If you really need something, call me. And until they had that conversation, their communication was terrible. But now it's like, oh, she understands what he needs, and she understands. Anyway, side note. But that's the thing is to have healthy relationship, we have to have healthy agreement with each other. Proverbs 18:19 says this, an offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Dang. Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars. There are too many people who need the love of Jesus for us to stay in offense. I'm not saying, please hear me, I am not saying have no boundaries and just let people act however they want to. Boundaries are so important. Please never hear that from me. Boundaries are so important. We have to hold people accountable. We have to make sure that people are treating us with respect and that we're treating them with respect. So I'm not at all saying, oh, let people walk all over you. But I am saying it is within you to either allow a root of bitterness to be planted or to choose to constantly forgive, constantly give grace, constantly give more and more and more chances. Right? Jesus, I think it was his disciples who asked him, how many times should we forgive when somebody sins against us? And he says, 7 times 7. Right? And that basically is the way, 7 is a complete number, and it's basically the way of saying, and there's a whole bunch more to it I'm not going to get into, but it's basically the way of saying, always, forever. Just keep doing it. We just keep forgiving because that's what he does for us. How many of you guys have seen the movie Jesus Revolution? If you haven't seen it, you should see it. We should have a movie night. Let's do that. That's a good movie. I blubbered my way through both times I saw it. I'm like, Jesus, I want that. I want that. And we're seeing it. Yeah. It's so good. But there's this amazing part. It's a true story of a guy named Lonnie Frisbee and Chuck Smith, Pastor Chuck Smith. And Pastor Chuck Smith was a part of this really little Calvary Chapel. It was before the denomination. They started the denomination, Calvary Chapel. And so he has this little tiny church. And it's kind of, it's dying out. You got these people and they're just not a whole lot of life. And he's frustrated. He's like, God, come on, what's going on? And he ends up talking to his daughter. It's in the time of the late 60s, early 70s. And he's talking to his daughter and they start talking about hippies. And anyway, long story short, there's this hippie that comes along named Lonnie Frisbee. And he comes in and Chuck actually welcomes him in to his church. And the Jesus People movement is born. And this massive outpouring in California, and then it's spread throughout the entire United States and into to the rest of the world. This power, one of the most powerful revivals in history. All because one guy, and he fully did not understand hippies. He's like, I don't know, man. I don't get it. But he says yes, and he welcomes them in. And there's this really powerful scene where some of the people have kind of been around the church, and they're getting frustrated because these smelly, druggy hippies are walking in and ruining their carpet. And our carpet needs to be cleaned. And doing, just... They're frustrated, and they're coming at him, and they're like, hey, you're about to lose all your people who give you the money, so you better watch it. And instead of Chuck giving into that, he stands up and he says, hey, I'm not even going to do it justice, you should go watch the movie, but he basically just says, everyone is welcome here. And a couple people get up and walk out. And then there's this one old guy who gets up from his side, because they were kind of sitting, the hippies over there and the church people over here. And this one old guy gets up from the church side and just goes and sits with the hippies and puts his arm around them. And it's this beautiful scene of the older brother going, my little brother's back. And I'm going to be happy about it. Everything. The truth is, I don't have a crazy testimony. I really don't. I was a, church kid, loved the church, grew up in church, I was a PK, pastor's kid, so I had my PK moments. You can't be a pastor's kid if you don't have those rebellious moments. So some of you guys witnessed my rebellious years, and God came and radically helped me to just get back on track with him and all of that. But I was never like, I don't have that crazy testimony. The testimonies that like fire people up and like, I don't know. And it could be really easy for me. And there's been moments where I can kind of go, God, like how come these people come in and they've got these crazy stories and then you just like, man, God pours out. What about me? But instead, God has just given us, not me, us. He's given us a heart to see every person saved. He's given us a heart to say, hey, it's not about us. It's not about us. It's not about, yes, I said it a few weeks ago, but the brother is literally working in the field, so he doesn't even know his younger brother's come back. He's working in the field, and then he comes in, and he's so offended because his brother's getting all this stuff, and how could he? How dare he? But even the fact that he's working in the field shows us that he doesn't actually know who he is. Because as the one, he is the heir, right? And the Father says, everything I have is yours. You could have killed a fountain calf anytime you want to. Have a party with your friend anytime you want to. This belongs to you. It belongs to you. But he doesn't understand his identity, so he's still working in the field like one of the servants. That's not me saying that, obviously the owners and whatever should work in the field too. But he is so wrapped up, still trying to earn his father's respect, still trying to earn his inheritance, that he just can't see that everything the father had was already his. Yesterday morning, let me give you a little backstory. We have some bunnies, and we had the bunnies all together, and we're like, we should probably separate the boys and girls. That's a good thing to do. So we separated the boys and girls. We put them all in their own little places. But yesterday we found out we were about 2 days too late on that, because bunnies have babies in 30 days, and we separated them, 28 days ago or something like, or some 32, I don't know, what's my math? And so we separated them a little bit too late. And so yesterday Gigi, who comes and takes care of all the animals for us in the morning, and Cody and I were staying here, and she's like, hey, so one of the bunnies was pregnant. And so we run down there. And because we didn't realize that actually 2 of the bunnies are pregnant, now we realized, but because we didn't realize, we had left them in with the other girls. And they got freaked out, and so some of the babies didn't make it. But there's this one little precious one that made it, and we've been like taking care of it and nursing it and whatever, like helping it. But what's so crazy is Gigi said it was actually outside of the cage. And it got pushed outside of the cage. And that's the reason it survived. Because the other bunnies, didn't freak out. And not to get too graphic, but God was speaking to me about that. And he said, that bunny survived because it got pushed outside of the cage. And I think God's saying 2 things to us. I think he's saying, number 1, we need to get outside of the cage. We need to get outside of the walls of the church. Here we are. We need to get outside of our normal and our routine, and we need to start to take some risks. But I also believe he's saying this. That poor little bunny, when it got pushed outside and separated, it was probably terrified, right? But it was actually that pushing out, that separating, that saved it. And I think for many of us, there are moments in our life, there are moments in our walk with God where we feel so isolated, so separated. We feel abandoned. But actually, that's exactly what he needs in order to get us to the places where he can grow us, where he can save us, where he can offer us healing. I was thinking about before Cody and I got married, I was dating this guy. I won't name his name, we'll just call him Jerkface. But I was like convinced, Amen, right? I was convinced that I was going to marry this guy. We had talked about it all and all this stuff, and then right down there at that parking lot, he breaks up with me. And I was devastated, like, devastated. I thought this was the end. I thought, like, I don't generally struggle with depression, praise God, but that was a really dark time for me. And I didn't know if I was going to make it. And I felt so abandoned by God, and I was like, God, why would you do this? Like, I thought this was the one. But it was in that moment that I had no idea what God had for me. I had no idea that instead of marrying this guy who would end up cheating on me and walking away, I ended up finding this amazing man who, he was actually right here all along, thank you, Thornbury. But I ended up finding this guy who, like, is everything I could have ever wanted and more. But in that moment, I felt so alone and so abandoned and so discouraged and so unseen. And God was like, I'm taking you out here to prepare you for something better. I'm separating you to save you. You are not abandoned, you are adopted. He has everything for you. And I believe that it's in these moments that God is asking us to just trust him. And we've been doing that, and it's been, like, insane. You guys, come on, has it been insane to see how God's showing up? And I was sitting holding this little tiny baby last night, this little baby bunny, and a bunch of people came into this room, and I was like, does anybody know the Hebrew word for miracle? So I was like, we need to call this baby Miracle. You guys want to hear the Hebrew word for miracle? Yeah. Okay, hopefully this is going to work.
Strong's H, 4159. More faith. More faith.
Do you hear that? The Hebrew word for miracle in English is pronounced mo faith. Mo faith. Come on, people. More faith. If you want a miracle in your life, if you want to see people saved, like, only God can do that. Like, in the Hebrew language, create the word for miracle that in English sounds like more faith. Right? We need to step into more faith. Our faith pleases God. Our faith to believe him for our healing. Our faith to believe that no matter who's offended you, no matter who has hurt you, no matter what has happened, whether it goes all the way back to before you were born and you felt unwanted, whether it's something that somebody did yesterday, that if you will step in to more faith, your miracle will come. If you will step in to relationship with him and with others, your miracle will come. The word talks about how there's that story, I won't get into it, but there's a story of the guy who refuses to forgive. And Jesus literally says that it's like he then is jailed and the tormentor can come. Some of you have been tormented with bitterness, anger. Some of you have been tormented physically. Some of you have not been able to let go of some sins in your life or struggles. And I want to ask today, just as the band comes up here and we close, I want you to just take a moment. We're going to have people up here to pray for you after, but for right now, I want you to take a moment with God. And I want you to ask him, do I have any root of bitterness or offense? Because I promise you something, it's not hurting the person you're offended at. They probably don't care. But it opens a gate for the tormentor to come into your life. Unforgiveness is so damaging to your soul. And choosing to sit back and ridicule, choosing to sit back and doubt and question God's ways, when he's the kind of God who goes, let's invite the hippies in. He's the kind of God who goes, let's invite the prostitutes and the sinners and the tax collectors. That's the God we serve. And when we sit back thinking, well, we know better, well, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that, because we're so stuck in our ways. We allow the tormentor to come. So right now, God, we just ask for you to minister to each of our hearts. God, I ask that for myself and every single person inside this tent or outside this tent, God, that you would just bring to mind any area of hurt or pain that we still need to deal with. God, any area where we have unforgiveness. And God, we just want to come to you and we want to repent for that. We want to repent in the truest sense of the word, and that is to turn from it, but also to allow our minds to be renewed, that we could actually see these people, see these situations, see these moments where we felt separated and abandoned, and recognize that we are fighting against powers and principalities, and what you have for us is so much more, and your way is so much better. God, renew our minds right now. God, help us to release forgiveness. It's one of the hardest things to do, because it feels like we're giving up a piece of ourselves. But let me tell you right now, it's not a piece of you, it's a piece of the enemy in you. So whatever it takes, if you want to get on your knees, if you want to jump up and dance, if you need to go make a phone call, I want to encourage you. Allow God to speak to you right now. Allow him to renew your mind and bring forgiveness.